I've got every fruit, sword, fighting style, gun, and racing Blox fruits and put them all into this tier list. And I'm going to be ranking them to decide what the best of each are. Starting with the first fruit we are going to be ranking is the rocket fruit. The cheapest fruit in all of Blox fruits. Now, in terms of visuals for the rocket fruit, the actual fruit itself is kind of clean. I also like the little blast off that it does here. That's very cool. However, visuals isn't just the fruit. It's also visuals of the attacks. And I gotta say, the blasts and stuff for this fruit, kind of sick. This also looks very cool. Like, this is just a better flame fruit, if I'm being honest. It just looks better than flame. So in terms of visuals, this is like a pretty high-ranking fruit. But when it comes to damage, the rocket fruit is kind of mid because of how difficult it is to hit things with the moves. Or at least how difficult it is to hit other players with moves. If you're grinding against mobs, it's not too bad. But also, just having only 3 attacks is so bad. So although this fruit isn't as good as the mighty kilo fruit, it's alright. I definitely wouldn't put it in anywhere above C tier. So you know what? I'll just leave it in C tier. That's mainly because of its damage. Next up, we have got the spin fruit. Now this fruit, in terms of visuals, pretty basic on the fruit department. The attacks, that one like didn't even come out, but the attacks are like pretty cool. They look very similar to like the swords, which is quite nice. But apart from that, like the visuals are the only thing about this fruit that make it like semi-good. Once again, just only having 3 moves is so bad for the fruit. Now, there is one thing that makes this fruit like slightly decent. It's the fact that that move goes so far, but that's not going to make it rank up like a whole extra tier. So I'm going to give the spin fruit also a C tier. You know, it's about the same as rocket. The next fruit we have got is chop. Now, this fruit I was instantly going to put in F tier. However, there is one thing about this fruit that makes it impossible to put it in F tier. Its moves might all look bad, actually be bad, and like only really do damage if you get super close. But because of this one feature of this fruit that makes you immune to swords, I physically can't put it in F tier. So this fruit is going to be on the higher end of C tier. Next up, we have got spring. And this fruit, wow, is it bad. It's got no range, hardly any damage. And not only that, the visuals are so bad. However, there is one thing about this fruit that makes it not terrible. And it involves this bridge right here, surprisingly. The fact that with the spring fruit, you can do this and just bounce across the bridge faster than the light fruit is the only thing that makes this fruit not an F tier. Because best believe I would have put this in F tier. But the 4th category I mentioned at the very start is enjoyment. So how fun the fruit actually is to use. And because you can do this one thing, that's what makes spring not an F tier. But then again, it's still at the very bottom of C tier. Next on the tier list is another common, the bomb fruit. This fruit's visuals, super cool. This is one of my favorite like actual fruits to just hold. But in terms of the attack visuals, they are a bit lackluster, you could say. Just a little bit lackluster. And in terms of like actual grinding and how useful it is just in general, it's really not that good. However, this fruit is easily better than every other fruit in common because of this one move right here. This move has the potential to be the most damaging move in the entire game because of this. You can just pull the enemies over and over, and then they just melt, and they can't even see the mines. At least, like, that's my favorite thing to do with it. Also, I do really like using self-destruct and just, like, sacrificing all of my HP to do a big damage attack. However, I did all that damage and lost 10k HP, so not really worth. So if I had to rate the bomb fruit, it would honestly probably be top of C tier because I love placing the mines down so much without people realizing. Now, don't get me started on the smoke fruit. The first elemental fruit on this list. Now, the fruit actually looks kind of cool. The attacks, I mean, they're all right. They look kind of cool. But the craziest thing about this fruit isn't the fact that you can just not take damage. It's how much damage this fruit does for being a common. Although it's only got 3 moves, you can just absolutely melt health with this fruit. It's not even fair. And for grinding, you can just fly around enemies and never have to worry about being hit. So that's why smoke deserves to be B tier. Final common fruit is the spike fruit. This fruit you would not want to step on. But also, you wouldn't really want to use it either because not only is its Z move really bad unless you charge it all the way, its whirlwind move also extremely mid, and your arms look like that. Spike Barrage is like only good if you hold it down. The only really redeeming feature of the spike fruit is this move here, the Sonic move. But even that, it looks kind of bad, and it isn't really useful if you're fighting against other players. This fruit also has like nothing actually fun about it at all. It's basically just a really bad dough. That's what this fruit is. So if I had to rate Spike, it would probably be low-key almost an F tier fruit, but instead I'll put it in C tier because I don't think there's like an actual F tier. I mean, these two are kind of like pretty close, so you know, I'll put them in there for now. You know what? I'll actually just leave them in there because they are bad. Next is arguably one of the coolest design fruits in this game, the flame fruits. Now, not only does that fruit look cool, but its awaken moves are also pretty good for damage. It's also really nice just having a Logia fruit so you don't have to worry about taking damage. And although it is slow, it does have a flight, which is more than some other things get. Not only that, you can also throw a literal sun at any enemy that you want, which in my books is pretty cool. However, it is certainly not A tier. It's definitely very high B tier in my books. Now, next up, we have got the godly falcon fruit. This fruit is so heavily slept on, it's crazy. Now, in an actual PvP situation, falcon isn't doing much. However, if I'm 1v1ing Sand Pirates, I will happily take a falcon any day of the week. I have managed to beat him when he had dragon using this fruit. Now, in terms of flight speed, this fruit is pretty slow. It's not super fast, but the moves it has are also like kind of limited, which does slightly suck. So although I really like this fruit, I'm honestly super biased because realistically, I'm never killing anyone in PvP with this ever. So this fruit can only realistically go in B tier. Now we've got the ice fruit, which in the looks department looks really clean. And not only that, it's our first fruit with actual left clicks. Left clicks are so underrated in this game, not only is it Logia as well, so you can actually just get close when you're farming and not have to worry unless you're in the third sea. Not only that, but its moves, the fact that they freeze and stun are so good. And my personal favorite thing about this fruit is how bugged ice skating gets when you hit a slight ramp. It's honestly my favorite thing about this entire fruit, just because you can do that. Like, look at that. Honestly, there's nothing better. Also, you can't forget about the fact that it's functional. You can stand on water without worry. So the ice fruit for me is honestly an A tier fruit. Like the stuns, everything else make it perfect, but not quite S tier. Sand fruit for me was going to be an instant A tier. However, there is one major weakness with this fruit, and it involves one of the most key parts of Blox fruits, and that's the ocean. As if you step in the water, you take so much more damage than just a regular fruit. It's ridiculous. But just in general, like this fruit's moves look kind of sick. They also do tons of damage, which I like. And my favorite move, just being able to like grab an enemy and trap him like that. So cool, bro. And don't even get me started on this move. Like my arm might look broken right now, but that's one of the coolest. So despite all of these things, I sadly have to put sand in B tier. So I've never really got into PvP or anything yet, but this fruit, the dark fruit, is supposed to be one of the best combo fruits in the entire game, which I can totally see why. Other than the fact that the fruit itself looks terrible, we've got a move that literally slashes you towards whoever you aim at. We've got this move that just pulls people in and they can't escape, and then just dark floor. Like they step on this, they can't move. Oh, and you've also got like the B-Tech flame fruit attack here as well, which is honestly all pretty sick. My favorite thing about this fruit is literally just dimensional slash being so cool. Easily one of my favorite moves in all of Blox fruits. But what does that make this fruit? I think A tier is super solid for dark. Definitely deserves an A tier. Next up, we have got the diamond fruits. And this fruit could possibly be the first F rank. I can't stand this fruit. It's so bad. There's people out there who think this is the mini Buddha fruits, but let me show you why it's not. Number one reason. Move is bad. Look at that cooldown. I mean, yeah, it's only got 4 moves as well. The damage reduction also sucks. Not only that, beaming tackle doesn't have much range at all. The only cool thing about this fruit that makes it kind of fun is the fact that you can flashbang people. But apart from that, this fruit, it has to go F tier for me. I can't stand the diamond fruit. But now we're getting onto one of the goat fruits. We've got the light fruit. This fruit, once again, has left clicks, which is already pretty insane. Not only that, its moves are literally busted once you awaken it. Every single one of these moves... Ow. Ow. Okay, maybe not Longman. Maybe let's not fight Longman. Every single one of these moves look cool.
Sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
and it does so much damage. This fruit was literally my favorite fruit to level up with in the first sea. So for that reason, because I enjoyed it so much, it has to be an S tier. But now it's time for one of the most controversial fruits ever. The rubber fruits. The reason I say controversial is because people with no skill say this fruit is terrible. However, to me, this fruit is easily one of the best. Number one reason why it's one of the best. You can absolutely launch yourself to the moon if you really want to. Like, I just crossed most of Turtle in one slingshot. And I could go even further if I aimed it further. This fruit also does have left clicks. Mind you, they're not very good unless you get transformation. But my favorite thing about this fruit is honestly the slight combo potential you have with this thing. Like, there's so many different things you can do with this fruit that just make it so good. And honestly, just make it like one of my favorites. And I won't lie to you, I also thought this fruit was like incredibly mid in the past. However, I've really come to like this fruit. In fact, I like it so much so that I'd put it in A tier. Back-to-back glorious fruits. We've got Barrier next. Now, this fruit might not be one of the best for PvP, damage, looks, or for being like at all functional, but my goodness, does it have a good ability. You can block people from coming inside of Turtle Mansion. Now, if that's not a W, I don't know what is. Also, the Barrier C move is like surprisingly not bad because although it puts you in place, you do get like coverage around yourself, which is kind of cool. So while this fruit might not have like the most flashy looking attacks and possibly the worst movement ability ever, I like this fruit. I like it. So for the Goofy Barrier fruit, we're gonna put this in B tier. The Ghost fruit is next, one of the latest fruits in Blox fruits. And I mean, the best thing about this fruit is this right here, the fact that a little ghost pops out the right side of the fruit. The second best thing isn't actually the minions, which although the minions are really good, it's the fact that you get a second life if you get low. Not only that, I mean like your minions literally attack for you, which is crazy for damage. However, the fruit just doesn't feel that strong in general. So I'd be happy with putting the Ghost fruit at like very top of B tier. Now then, I'm like permanently spooky right now, but the next fruit is Magma, which has some super cool like visual effects going on the actual fruits. The actual attacks, I mean, like, it's magma, right? It's doing what it says. Now, this fruit is like literally the go-to sea beast hunting fruit. Like, if you want to find a sea beast and defeat a sea beast or even a leviathan, this is the fruit that you need. So for that reason, like the fact that it can solo, like basically the hardest content in Blox fruits, and also the fact that it's got that one move called Magma Floor, Magma has to go in A tier. Now we have got our first legendary fruit, the Quake fruit. Now, this fruit's visuals, super cool. Its attacking visuals, wait, I've got the unawakened version on, so I need to go fix that. How have I still got the unawakened Quake? Problem solved. We've now got visuals. And I gotta say, they're honestly kind of mid. The only slightly cool thing about the Quake fruit is this move right here, Sea Quake, which just spawns like giant tsunamis. However, the only thing about this move that sucks is they basically never hit. If anything, Basento is just like a massively better version of Quake. Like this sword right here is literally just like a cooler version of Quake. I suppose there is one slightly cool thing about Quake. It's the Z move, which when you hit does like this really cool like screen cracking effect. But other than that, I can't stand this fruit. This is like chop fruit to me. So for that simple reason, Quake is going in C tier. Now then, this next fruit could honestly just be the best fruit in all of Blox fruits right here, the Buddha fruit. And it's for the simple reason that you can become a huge glow stick. Now you might be wondering, why glow stick's so good? Glow stick makes you take like 0 damage and gives you bonus reach. So although the moves of the Buddha fruit itself aren't like crazy cool, I mean, like it looks pretty cool, but they're not insane for like damage and grinding. What makes this fruit so good is the fact that you can just have a fighting style on and basically have reach hacks. This fruit has helped me grind through many a boring grinding session in Blox fruits, so it has to go in S tier. It has to. It can't be anything less. I've also heard it's pretty good in PvP. The next legendary fruit we're looking at is the Love fruit. And this fruit is so good. It's heavily slept on. Now, not only does this fruit have like some crazy long range attacks, and also some like pretty cool close range attacks to pull people in, but you can summon a minion that fights for you. And it's cool as well because it picks a random person from your Roblox friends list. Like this guy's got the chopper hat on. He just absolutely pieced up that mob all by himself. Like, look, I don't even have to play the game. The game's playing itself for me. And you might be thinking, oh, that's kind of cool, but that's not S tier. I'm about to show you why this fruit is S tier. As soon as my best friend dies, which honestly he won't, he wins those. Okay, never mind. But it's the fact that you can do this. If I go like this, you can kidnap NPCs on your flamingo ride move, which is what makes this fruit so good. Easily my favorite thing about the fruit. So because you can kidnap NPCs, that's an S tier. Next up, we have got the Spider fruit, which along with looking super cool, just lets you be Spider-Man. Like, how could you dislike just being Okay, hang on. That wall wasn't meant to be there. Just dislike being Spider-Man. Also, it's got like some of the longest range moves in the entire game. The sniper move is supposed to be one of the longest, and also this Heavenly Punishment move is some of the highest single attack damage any fruit has, 9k. Other than that, like its other moves are kind of mid, but it is a fun fruit to use. It is, however, incredibly bad for grinding. So for that reason, I'm gonna stick Spider in A tier, just because I've seen some absolute combo gods go crazy with this fruit. The Sound fruit. This fruit looks really cool, and not only do its attacks look cool as well, but the tempo meter is like a super unique thing that no other fruits have, and the fact that it like changes the look of all of the moves when you're in tempo is amazing. And don't get me started on the disco move. This move has too much range. Like honestly, you could hit someone from halfway across the map with that move. Now, one thing that a lot of people don't know as well is the tempo meter also gives you defense and speed buffs when you have it, making this just like one of the strongest fruits in general. And once again, like I don't know how good this fruit is for PvP. I can imagine it's probably decent, certainly not as good as other fruits. So I'm gonna put this at basically the top of A tier. The Phoenix fruit, the best looking fruit physically in the entire game, at least in my opinion. The way that it flies like that just makes it like instantly S tier. But the rest of the fruits is also S tier. And the fact that in this mode, you've got like a click, you've got a changed F move that does damage, you've got an X move, you've got a C move that looks incredibly cool, and you can heal. Like, what's not to like? Well, I'm about to show you what's not to like in literally just a second, because that's how long it takes to lose your stamina with this fruit. Because when you're transformed, you burn through your energy just for being in the mode. And healing up as well takes an absolute ton of energy to do. And also, what I don't really like about this fruit is it doesn't really do too much when you're just like in base form. So that's why for me, Phoenix is honestly just like around the ghost tier. It's not as fun as things like Spider. Next up, we have got Portal. And literally, I don't need to say anything for this fruit. It's just the best fruit in all of Blox fruits. And there's no denying it. Literally, you can say what you want, but not only can you literally escape people if you're being attacked and go into a different dimension, but this right here is what makes this fruit the best. Being able to TP wherever you want across the map, this is probably the fruit that I have equipped the most ever. So there's no debate that this is just like the best fruit in all of Blox fruits. Like if I want to go to the second sea, I can literally go to port in half a second and be out of this sea whenever I want. So I won't have anyone disrespecting Portal in S tier. Rumble is the next legendary fruit on this list, and not only does it look so sick with the lightning and the little thundercloud above its head, but this fruit, in my opinion, has some of the coolest looking attacks in all the game. Just firing a lightning bolt at someone doesn't get better. Giant black thunderball, also super cool. And also the fact that, I mean, it doesn't have a fly, but it's got those 3 TPs, which is also kind of cool. This fruit would have been like an S tier for me, especially with its combo potential. However, there is one reason why it's not S tier. This fruit right here is the reason why this isn't S tier. Because if you didn't know, you can't hit people with rubber if you have Rumble, which is honestly like the biggest nerf this fruit could have got, but it makes complete sense. Like it's a low gear and everything, so it's like super strong, you don't get hurt. However, it's A tier. Now there's a reason why this fruit looks so sad, and it's because it's so bad. Like, I can't stand this fruit. It's so mid. I'm about to show you the one redeeming feature of this fruit. It's not even fun to use. Torture is kind of cool, but you can't even, like, once you tap, it goes where you tap. So if I want to change from that guy there to there, you literally can't. The only slightly good thing about this fruit is the fact that the moves just go really far. Like, I hit that mob all the way from over here, which I don't know, like it's cool. It's got 4 attacking moves and like a kind of movement move. It doesn't change the fact that I'm putting it in F tier. Next up, we have got the Blizzard fruits. He's just a shivery cold little boy, but through the shivering, it's one of the most OP fruits in the entire game. I feel like for PvP, this fruit's probably quite strong due to the fact that you can just catch people in your tornadoes. Not only that, it's got a domain that's like the entire size of Great Tree. What's not to like? Oh, and also you can just like fly forever and just infinite combo people. Now, if things like Kitsune and stuff weren't in this game, this would be an S tier for me. However, for now, it's just simply an A tier. Very high A tier, though. Now we are on the mythical fruits, and also the first big disappointment in all of Blox fruits, the gravity fruit. Now, this fruit looks insanely cool. The moves themselves, I mean, like, they're all right. It's got like an extremely mid-looking meteor and like 6 extremely mid-looking meteors. But the thing that makes this fruit so bad is this. The fact that most of those missed. Like, what is that? How are you gonna have a move that barely hits? Like, I mean, I guess the X move is kind of cool. Like, you hold them down with gravity. But, like, that's not good enough. And also, you can't use boulder flight unless you touch the floor first. It is kind of cool how you, like, take the material or whatever you use when you use boulder flight. So, like, look, now it's, like, that color. But gravity is still just a C tier fruit for me. We are on the juicy fruits now. We've got mammoth. Although, I mean, the fruit looks like a mammoth. It's kind of cool. But what makes this fruit so cool is the attacking moves. This move is so sick. That's just base form as well. The other, like, attacks with the shadowy mammoth above you, also incredibly cool. But my favorite thing about mammoth is simply the transformation. It's so sick. I love it so much. This fruit, easily one of the coolest. It's also, like, one of the scariest things ever when it's just, like, charging towards you and there's nothing you can do. So this fruit, easy S tier. Now, as you can see by the next fruit, we've got our little tail there already, and that is the T-Rex fruit. This fruit looks insanely cool. But what I like most about this fruit is once you get out of base form. Like, that X move, kind of cool. It's also got a left click in base, which makes it way more fun than like 90% of the other fruits in this game. However, what really makes this fruit is once we fill up the Fury meter. This right here is why the fruit's so good. You can just be a T-Rex and you can just vibe. Now, also, the Hunter's Mark is like a really cool, unique ability where the further away someone is from you, the more passive damage they take. I didn't think we'd get a fruit that's like basically as strong as Mammoth so soon, but that's exactly what T-Rex is. So T-Rex, also an S tier. Now, next up is the Dough fruit. And honestly, before some of these new fruits came out, this was literally my favorite fruit in the entire game. Like, the fact that you can go on water with it, the fact that the haki shows up around the dough as well, insanely cool. Not only that, but somebody as like unskilled as me can use a combo with this fruit without much issue. But easily the best thing about this entire fruit isn't that the fact that it's got like left clicks or anything. It's the C move. The fact that the C move is so cool is what makes this fruit like arguably one of my favorite fruits in the entire game. So although I have to do it again, this fruit is also just getting S tier. It's time for my favorite fruit in Blox fruits. And it just so happens to be nighttime as well, which is the perfect time for this fruit to shine. So this fruit has something called an umbra meter, which fills up in the darkness. And it's also like, it gets faster and faster as it goes on. The fruit itself also looks insanely cool, super devious. However, that's not the best thing. The attack's incredibly cool because you use bats to attack. It also just has like a complete life leech move, so if you get low, you can just regen. But the best thing about this fruit is this. The fact that you can just use a domain expansion, and anybody who gets trapped inside just gets hit by bats and they can't escape. Although I hate to admit it, this fruit does lack a couple of things, mainly being range. And the problem with the domain is people can just like flash step outside, which does bring a tear to my eye when that happens. But for my sake, this fruit's an S tier. This fruit right here is called the venom fruit. And although it looks incredibly devious, like it places down spicy water on the floor that if they walk into, they take a lot of damage. Also creates like a spicy breath. And if you transform, just makes like all of these moves even stronger. As you can see, like it changes the spicy floor's color. And its F move as well has like heat-seeking poison things. The main appeal of this fruit is the fact that you can just place down a toxic fog, which just covers like a bunch of area. But I think I've heard in PvP that that's like kind of mid. The model of the venom beast, super cool. So for me, this fruit, it has to be another S tier. We're getting too many S tier fruits now. This fruit right here, although it looks happy, was gonna be put in the F tier. However, there is a couple things about this fruit that make it like not complete trash. The room itself is kind of mid. Levitate, also very hard to hit. And Echo Knife, also pretty cool how you like slice them up into little bits. And don't get me started on the fact that this move just starts a complete unskippable cutscene on the enemy. However, not only do all of these moves have to be used in the room, so if somebody just like, I don't know, steps outside of the room, you're useless. But the teleport is honestly like not super amazing either. It's probably one of the better parts of this fruit, but that doesn't compare at all to the ultimate part of this fruit, which is the fact that you can pick up this thing in Sea Castle. You can pick up an entire part of the castle with this fruit. But also, if someone's boat is just blocking your way, you can literally just grab it and throw it away. Like, it just moves out the way. But even with like those two main things, making it like semi-fun to use, I can't rank this any higher than B tier. Now we have got the spirit fruit. This fruit's model, really clean. Also, the fact that there's like an entire mini game in this fruit in itself with this bar on the right, where if you click it in the blue side, it spawns like a good spirit, and then like the bad side, it spawns like an evil one. I really like how there's so many different things you can get. Also, the moves themselves, I mean, like they don't look too bad. It's more about the fact that they just do so much damage that makes this fruit good. However, my favorite thing about this fruit isn't that you can spam spirits. It's this end of times move that just looks so cool. Other than that, like you can hop on your spirit things and like fly around, but it's super slow and not really worth doing. I have, however, heard that this fruit's like very good for combos. Like you can do some really good combos. So for that simple reason, although I've never really dived into it myself, I feel like I have to put spirit in S tier, because I feel like if you get good with this fruit, I feel like you could easily kill people that use like T-Rex and dough. Next up, we have got the old dragon fruit. Now we're supposed to be getting like a reworked dragon fruit somewhat soon. Hasn't happened yet, but the current dragon fruits, if I'm being honest, is kind of mid. Like you've got this wing flight move, you've got like a beam, you've got this cool claw, which like that's a cool move. Like the fact that you grab and drag them, and then fire shower is also like super cool. And once my fury meter fills up, I'll showcase like arguably the coolest thing about this fruit. Here we go. It's time to showcase dragon mode. Meow. This fruit is only good because of this. Like its moves all change. It gets like a crazy cool like barrage blast thing, which is kind of mid because it stops you in place. I'm sure this fruit's just gonna get like infinitely better when the new update comes out. But all those things aside, current dragon fruit, it's got to go in S tier as well, but like lower end of S tier. It could eventually become like S plus, especially after the update. Do we even need to like spend time ranking this? This is like the easiest S tier fruit in all of Blox fruits. The fact that you get left clicks, you get so much spam with this fruit, it can make even the worst players good, which is why I like it so much. It's also like incredibly fast, which is crazy good. So this fruit, it's S tier. It's not even close. Now this is the current most expensive fruit in Blox Fruits. The Kitsune fruit. Looks incredibly cool. Not only that, it's got left clicks in base form. All of its moves as well just look insanely cool. The blue fire, they've absolutely cooked. So it's already an S tier just from these things. But wait, you'll notice we've only got one tail right now. Now I've got 2 tails, but my running and jumping changes. Then also, once you get to 3 tails and then completely fill up the 3-tail bar, you unlock the transformation. There we go, there we go. Which if I do this, you become a Kitsune. And now this fruit's moves all just become like insanely cool, do tons of damage. You keep your left clicks. If all of that wasn't worthy of S tier, you can also carry people on the saddle. But my all-time favorite thing about this fruit is the fact that you can make a Kitsune tower. That's the best thing about this fruit. So that just makes Kitsune by default the best fruit in the game. So that's my list of every single fruit in Blox Fruits. Let me know what you think. If you'd rank anything higher or lower, I won't hear it for any of these in F tier though. You can't make me change. I've got every single gun from Blox Fruits in a tier list, and I'm going to be ranking them to decide what the best gun in Blox Fruits truly is. Now, the criteria, like always, is 4 main things: visuals, damage, its functionality, and how refined it is. And that one is a key feature. Now, obviously, the first gun we're going to start with is the slingshot. Now, in terms of visuals, it's a slingshot, all right. The actual attack visuals, honestly, I can see why they're reworking this gun. It's just a light blue circle and a slight explosion. That's the only thing. And then left clicks, that's it. Now, in terms of how functional this is, I wouldn't even recommend taking this over combat. It is that mid. And obviously, the slingshot isn't refined at all. So that's an instant F here. But next up on the list is the musket. Now, in terms of visuals for the musket, it's at least a little bit better. It's got dragon bullet, which actually does look like a dragon. And you've got bold pistolero, which is just a very mid-looking tornado. Now, in terms of damage, it has more single-shot damage than the slingshot. However, you've got to reload it after every single shot. Now, one thing it does have on the slingshot is range. I can hit these monkeys from here, but due to the fact that you have to reload after every single shot, this gun is pretty not functional. So for that sole reason, it's just also gonna go top of F. Now then, we've got the second and last uncommon gun, the flintlock. In terms of visuals of the flintlock, I mean, it's all right. Once again, it is a flintlock. And once again, it's got a bit more range, just not as much as the musket. However, it fires so much faster than the musket and deals good damage. Its other 2 moves, disabling shot, it's just a purple bullet, and rapid gun is just 4 quick shots with some explosions. But in my opinion, the VFX and at least the functionality of disabling shot, like actually stopping them from moving, is so good that it at least deserves a C tier at best. And obviously, it's not refined, so it's not an A tier. Now we're on to something even better, the actual refined slingshot. This thing right here is glorious. It's got a whole new paint job. It deals slightly more damage, and the moves are the exact same, just with a bit more range. That's it. Functionality, once again, like, when are you ever going to use a slingshot apart from in a Send Pirates 1v1 video? So for that reason, and the fact that it's refined, it's going to go C tier. The next gun we're taking a look at is the cannon. And in terms of visuals for this one, I mean, it's just a cannon. The cannon has the single longest reload speed out of any gun in the game. However, the damage matches that. Not only that, but its moves also, they do burn, which is really good. The visuals definitely lacking. You can tell it's not been updated since they added it to the game. And in terms of functionality as well, like, realistically, you're never going to hit an actual player with a cannon mid-fight. Now, it's not going to go B tier, that's for sure, but I am going to put it at the top of C. I think it deserves at least that much. The next gun is the refined musket. And this is literally just musket reskinned. It's just got like a cooler pattern. And when I say that it's just got the exact same moves, I mean it has got the exact same moves. So since it's basically just the same gun reskinned with slightly more damage, it's just going to go in the same tier as the refined slingshot. The only reason these guys are getting C tiers is because they're refined. Next up, though, is the refined flintlock. And this gun, once again, is the exact same as the flintlock, except it does a bit more damage and looks a little bit different. That's it. But overall, it's not terrible. It's just like, once again, it's just so basic looking. So for that reason, it's just going to stay in C tier with the regular flintlock, but just above it by 1. Now, next up on the list is the Bazaar Rifle, which I've got a very, very bad enchantment on that just makes everyone angry at me. In terms of visuals, it looks all right. Once again, like, the guns, they are as they sound. It's a bizarre looking rifle. But what makes this gun so much cooler than any other gun we've seen so far isn't its damage, that is basically just a musket. It's its moves. Its first move, Hellfire Shower, does decent damage, fires off 3 bullets. But the coolest part about this gun is the heat-seeking shot, which if I send out, not even aiming at the mob, it just heat seeks. It just tracks onto them and kills them. It's so good. Which damage-wise, pretty good. Visuals-wise, like, it's a blue lightning electric orb. It's all right. You can tell it needs a rework, but compared to all the other guns we've seen so far, it's definitely one of the best. So for that reason, it's gonna go B tier, but probably low end of B tier. Next up, it's time for the final rare gun, the Acidum Rifle. If we're talking visuals, this one's got to be one of the coolest. The way that you have a backpack with like the toxic inside of it, so good. Actual attack visuals, definitely on the lower end. Now damage though, the damage of this gun is insane because it does the damage over time, which means it's perfect for PvP. There's a reason why people use this gun in skill builds. Other than the fact that the moves are hard to hit, it's also good if you can hit the moves. So for that reason, the functionality of this gun is also really good, especially if you've got like an ice enchantment like me. I slow them and poison them to death. Like, what's better than that? So I'm going to be giving Acidum Rifle our first S tier. Now then, it's time for the big guns. Specifically, a bazooka. The bazooka is literally just the cannon reskinned that does more damage. Now, its damage is good, but it falls under the same trap of the cannon of you're never going to hit the attacks. But apart from damage and functionality, if we're talking visuals, the bazooka looks cool, but its attack visuals are literally just cannon 2.0. So for that reason, it's going very bottom of B tier, only just not C tier. But now we're getting to the fun stuff. Our second legendary weapon is the Kabucha. Now this one looks super cool because of how similar it is to Usopp's in One Piece, although it is like a little basic. Once again though, it falls into the slingshot trap of having hardly any range, but it does at least have a little bit more damage. Now in terms of visuals of the attacks, we've got Flying Firebird, which does look very cool because you send off like a little phoenix, and then Intense Wind looks slightly cool. It could definitely be better though. Overall, not the best visuals, especially compared to the next two guns we're about to see. But that's not where this gun shines. This gun shines due to its combo potential. This X move is so good for trapping mobs and players. Definitely more so players. I don't know why you'd be using the Kabucha against mobs, but because of its potential, I think Kabucha deserves top of A tier for sure. Now then, this next gun is actually my #1 sleeper hit for the list. It's the Serpent Bow. Now currently right now, the actual visuals of the bow, probably the coolest or second coolest one that there is. It's literally just a snake that's been like woven and molded into a bow, which is pretty sick. Unfortunately, it does have like basically Kabucha's range. However, as you can see, it does a bit of poison damage, which already makes it better than Kabucha. In terms of its attacks, it's got Poisonous Blast, which does exactly that. But that's not what makes this the sleeper hit of this list for me. It's the X move that makes it the sleeper hit. Since I've started dabbling in some more PvP type stuff, which you guys will see very soon, I've discovered that the X is unbelievably busted. If you hit someone with this, as you can see, he's walking towards me. I hit him with the X. He can't move. He gets stunned. And it seems to last even longer on players. Now, obviously, it's not refined or anything, but it's still an S tier. Call me crazy, but it's an S tier. Now it's time for the final gun, the Soul Guitar. Now, visuals of the actual gun, easy S tier. Same with the visuals of the left clicks. It's so much cooler than anything else. The way that the music notes all explode away, super sick. The Z looks cool. You have like a skeleton skull, like shouting, and then doing a blast that knocks enemies away. And then El Diablo, the exact same thing, but it holds them up. Damage-wise, it's all right. But honestly, what makes it better than the damage is purely its functionality. It's so good for PvP that the Soul Guitar just instantly deserves to go top of S tier. No contest. Once again, let me know what you guys think of this tier list. If you guys agree, disagree, agree with the sleeper hit of the Serpent Bow, and let me know what your list would be in the comments. Now, the next things we're going to be ranking are the Blox Fruits races to find out which of them is the best, or at least the coolest. And the first race we're going to be taking a look at is the human race. It's the most common race out of every single one in Blox Fruits, with a 60% chance of obtaining when you first spawn into the game. But other than the fact that it changes absolutely nothing about your avatar, this race is pretty good. For unlocking race V2, you get an increase in movement speed, you get a doubled flash step range, way more than any other race, and you get an extra dodge when you use instinct. Now the human race is honestly probably one of the more crazy races in the game because of its V3, Last Resort. And what this does, if I attack one time, you see I do 2,100 damage, but if I attack after getting low and then activating Last Resort, it deals more damage depending on how low you are. So if I activate it and then left click, 2.8k. That did 700 more damage, which is so good for turning the tides in battle, which means it's pretty good for one-shot combos. But if we're going to be talking about races, we gotta talk about the V4. Okay, here we go. Human race V4. Looks insanely cool. Best part about it, you just start tweaking. Easily one of the coolest visuals. Now, this race has a ton of cool passives. Its first passive, you get 3 flash steps instead of just one, which is insanely strong. Now, the coolest passive about Race V4 is the fact that when you deal damage, your rage meter builds. And the higher this goes, the more damage you do. As you can see, I'm up to 110. One left click now does 3.7k damage. So other than the fact that this is just, it's so devious and it does such crazy damage, I'm putting it in S tier. Now, the next race we're ranking is the shark race. Now, this race is insanely good. Although you become slower than all the other races, it allows you to do this. Yep, you can swim despite having a fruit. It's so good. But not only that being like super good for sea beast hunting and doing any sea events, that's not what makes it so good. Its V3 ability, called Water Body, makes it so you take 65% less damage from attacks. But that's not even the best bit. Shark V4. This is insanely OP for damage reduction. Not only does it give you an actual like Fortnite shield bar, but this Race V4 also allows you to, when hitting someone, it adds a slow effect in the form of a whirlpool, and then it can stack up to 40%, so now she's just insanely slow. So I think AT is fair. Next up on the list is the rabbit race. But although it's the fairy race, it actually is really good because of the crazy speed buff you get. Like, this is me just running normally, but if I activate V3, you go so much faster, including with your dashes. But honestly, the best part about the rabbit is its V4. This race's V4 is so slept on, it's crazy. And here we go. Race V4, it looks super sick because of the lightning you get around you, but most importantly, it gives you an even larger speed buff. So you move at super speed. Now, it does have a really cool feature as well called the Super Dash, which does this. It's like a very cool looking fast dash that you can like control whichever way you want. Not many people know that, but you can just dash through like really thin walls. Not super useful though. What is useful about this race though, is when you dash, you leave behind a tornado. And this is unbelievably OP for PvP. Also, you can just like trap people in your tornadoes the whole time. But in terms of visuals, I think this one's got every other one beat so far. So I'm probably gonna give Rabbit, I'm gonna give it a top of A. It's time for one of my favorite races, the Angel race. It's my favorite and also one of most hated at the same time. Now in V1, this gives you a bit bonus jump height, which is kind of useful, but one of the cooler features of Angel is its Heavenly Blood ability, which increases your defense and also increases your regen by a crazy amount. Like, you guys saw how much faster I was regenning there? So it's the ultimate survivability race. And if we activate V4, you're about to see one of the most cringe but also OP V4s in existence. Angel V4. Visuals, easily S tier. And you also get this little ring around you, which is unbelievably OP. This works on not only mobs, but also players. If you go over towards them and they stand around this little angel-like ring that follows you, it forces them to kneel. Now, what makes me love this, but also hate it, is if you try and hit someone with a close-range move while they have Angel, you'll just be forced to kneel and it will do insane amounts of damage to you. Like, you just don't stand a chance against Angel. So due to the healing, the movement, the stun, it's such an easy S tier, it's crazy. Now then, I had to come to the second C for this one, but next up, we're talking about the Ghoul race. What makes Ghoul super OP is the fact that when you get Ghoul V2, when you hit a player using a fighting style, it increases your life leech. So you can heal back 25% of the damage you do each time you hit. It's the same with NPCs, but it's only 5%. Now, its special ability, Heightened Senses, if you activate that, it buffs your damage by 5% and your speed by an additional 10%. Also, you get like 15% extra defenses, so it's just an insanely OP ability. And that's not even all, because if I use this, and then I activate Heightened Senses, I can use my skill again when the cooldown was at like 30%. As you can see, I used it 3 times in the time that I'd be able to use it once, maybe twice. Now then, it's time for the coolest part of Ghoul. The V4. Aura and effects, S tier. You get 6 black wings that are like kind of impossible to see in the darkness. And you also get this crazy dark field. And what it does is anybody that stands in this gets their health regen completely tanked. And it adds blindness 3. Now, while in V4, every single attack you use gains life leech. So you attack and you gain life back so fast. Not only that, when you dash, your crows that are floating around you go and attack the enemies and regen health for you. It's so busted. So with all of those things combined, it's just one of the freest S tiers I could possibly put. And now the final race we're going to talk about is the Cyborg race. It's got some really cool drippy wings, which look nice, but like, what is this? It's so hideous. Now, one thing that is nice about Cyborg is that it gives you a base defense buff against melee swords and gun attacks. And any damage that you do take gets converted into energy, which is really useful in like prolonged fights. But arguably the best part about Cyborg is its energy core ability. And not only does it do insane damage, but it breaks instinct if you get hit by it, and it boosts your defense by 30%. But if we're talking Cyborg and its potential in PvP, we gotta show V4. Cyborg V4 might be the most OP V4, specifically for PvP. Now, V4 visuals wise, Your RGB lights change to purple. Now, what makes this so incredibly OP is V4's passive. You've got crazy jump boosts, which are insanely good for movement. You can also double jump. These double jumps also deal damage. And as you could probably see, all the other mobs are angry at me. And that's because V4 has these little orbs that chain lightning everything through me. I hit every single mob and it just keeps bouncing off them. So using that soul passive, if you get ganked by a team while PvPing, they will melt. In fact, their health might as well not have existed in the first place. It's that busted. Look at this. And it only gets amplified if you hit with punches as well. It's so busted. If you use a fruit-like sound, it just becomes the most insane race ever made. So for this reason and this reason alone, Cyborg, it's also got to be S tier. It's crazy how like closely matched all of these races are. But I'd probably say like Angel, Cyborg, and Ghoul are like the 3 best races in the game. Let me know what you guys think about the races though. I'm not 100% sure on these because I haven't dabbled enough in PvP with them. And then while you're letting me know, also subscribe. I've added every single sword from Blox Fruits into a tier list. And I'm going to be ranking them to decide what are the best swords in the game. To rank them, we're going to be basing it on 4 main things: visuals, damage, functionality, and number 4 is kind of niche, so I'll explain it soon. And we're starting with the katana, which also happens to be just right there. Now, in terms of visuals of the katana, the actual sword itself, pretty basic. Its attacks, also pretty basic. Now, in terms of damage, it's incredibly mid. And I've even got enchantments on this thing as well to like make it better. But what are you going to expect from like the very first sword in the game? In terms of how functional this sword is, you can't use it for movement because I only traveled about 2 pixels, and it also doesn't have any like super long range attacks. Therefore, the katana is easily a D tier. Now, the katana might be bad, but what about 2 of them? I've got the burning enchantment on this, so the damage is going to be better than if it didn't. But in terms of visuals, I mean, it's just katana squared, right? There's nothing crazy about it. The attack visuals also are just like sort of better versions of the previous one. What is kind of cool though is, I don't know if you caught that, is with the tornado move, you leave like a mark on the floor. Like that, which is some brownie points, I guess. Now, functionality, once again, the sword gives no movement. In fact, even less movement than the katana. But if we're talking damage, let's see. I mean, I'm being carried by the burn. I mean, it's all right. It's like incredibly mid. That's exactly how I describe it. You'd think 2 swords double the damage, but surprisingly no. And also, this sword doesn't really fall into the 4th category of how we're going to rank these, so it is simply another D tier. Now we're on the final common sword, the cutlass. Now this sword, it's just a copy-paste of katana. Like, genuinely, it's the exact same, except for the fact that I've got a different enchantment. It's just the same. There's nothing else different about it. Damage is also incredibly mid. So because of that, the cutlass, it's just the exact same as the katana. It looks a bit better, at least. Next up, we have got the... Can you not? We've got the iron mace. Now, this sword's visuals, like visually, the actual sword itself, it's all right. The visuals of the attacks, that move is kind of cool. That one is a little bit mid, you could say. In terms of damage, the thing that sets this sword apart from other swords is that right there. For the final left click, it becomes a slam, which also does a little bit more damage. But other than that, its range is so bad. Next, we're going to talk about how functional this sword is. And because of the enchantment on mine, it is really not functional when I'm just trying to stand around and do nothing because NPCs just start fighting me for no reason. Like, I can just be vibing right here, and look, they're already walking towards me. However, if I had this for grinding, this would be pretty useful. But because the visuals are like kind of a step up and the attacks kind of look cool, I'm going to put it in C tier. But next, we have got this sword right here, the Shark Saw. And this sword is actually really cool. So in terms of visuals, it's also got a final slam. Not only that, but its moves have really cool particles for just like an uncommon sword. Like, that is so cool. If you hold the Z move as well, you got like wiggly arms. You're like, you're holding back the power. In terms of functionality, this sword is like really not that functional. It's got 0 movement, but the execution move actually, like, it's kind of like a better version of the spin through. So for that reason, I'm gonna put it top end of C tier. I mean, realistically, it's just not ever gonna be B tier. The only thing that's B tier about this is just how cool it looks. Next, we have got the triple katana. The visuals of this sword, I mean, in terms of how it looks, it's just 3 katanas. Like, we just keep upgrading. The visuals of the attacks, though. Now, this is where it's starting to get clean. I absolutely love the blue aura of these attacks. It looks so good. But sadly, while it looks good, the actual damage you can output is honestly kind of mid. And not only that, it's got a movement ability that moves you about 2 centimeters. So because of how the attacks look, I'm putting this just below Shark Saw. All right, next up is Twin Hooks, which... Bro, why do these guys just fight me for no reason? Visually, the way that you hold this sword, it's so cool. One in front, one behind. The actual attacks... Yeah, like, I literally missed that one, but they're all right, I guess. There's nothing crazy about them. In terms of actual damage, like, that did 3.7k. That's kind of huge. And this move here, reaches from like all the way across there and stun locks the enemy. So already we're starting to see like a much better sword here. However, the damage is obviously like improved because of my mastery. Like I've got it to 300 mastery, which is more than all the other common swords. One thing that does kind of suck about this sword though is the Z move's range. Like you see how close I am to this enemy, right? And then I use the move and it only goes to there. However, I think I have seen people using twin hooks in like skilled PvP builds before, so it's definitely got potential. But just in my opinion, I think I prefer Shark Sword. But now moving on to the first rare sword of the bunch, and that's the Warden Sword. One thing that is kind of cool about the Warden Sword is how you hold it and how much range the left clicks have. Because the sword's longer, this could be placebo, but it feels like you can hit the enemies from further away. The actual moves of the Warden Sword, that move kind of looks cool. Tornado Slash. I mean, realistically, this is just the dual katana reskinned with a slightly cooler Z move. This sword, not functional at all. You can't use it to move, and you're basically never going to hit that move ever unless you're grinding. So for that reason, I mean, it's just a katana. So it's going in D tier. It's going top of D tier because it's got a bit more range. Now we're getting onto a super interesting one. We've got the regular trident. In terms of how just the sword looks, I think it's very cool. And in terms of visuals of the attacks, we've got trident throw, which looks so good. And then water pulse, which looks also very cool. Now this sword is kind of like a mid spiky trident in my opinion because of this trident throw, but you can like yoink them towards you. But the visuals, so much cooler than the spiky trident. This is why we need a water fruit. It just looks good. Now, in terms of functionality, although you have this move here where you fly towards it and then also like pull enemies towards you, the fact that the X moves holds you in place for so long kind of makes this sword a bit more mid. However, this sword does fall into the 4th category that I'm ranking these by. And that's like just how fun the sword is to use. And what makes this sword so much fun to use is the fact that you can just yoink and just pull people towards you. Like, that just instantly makes the sword so much better. And I guess as well, like, you can combo the Z into the X. So for that reason, I'm actually going to put this in B tier. Easily a B tier. Now we're getting onto a very interesting sword. The Soul Cane. Although you can buy this sword in the first C, it is not to be messed with. This sword is always a part of skill builds when people use them because it's got this move here, Soul Beam, which freezes people in place. It's also got Soul Slashes, which looks very cool. So in terms of visuals, I personally love how clean the Soul Cane is. I don't know, there's just something like oddly satisfying about it. This sword, while it might not have movement, the fact that you can just completely stun people in ice, as seen by this totally real player right here, instantly bumps it up a few tiers. And in terms of like how fun it is as well, like the fact that it's basically just like an ice fruit in a sword makes this way more fun than it needs to be. So for that reason, I'm actually going to put this sword at the very top of B tier. Next up, we have got one of my favorite swords in the entire game, a metal pipe. Now you might be wondering why a literal pipe is one of my favorite swords in the entire game, but just you wait and see. Let's talk damage. If I smack him over the head with a pipe, it's pretty good. Also, I've got burns, so like it's gonna be even better. But visuals, the pipe itself, I mean, it's a pipe, right? But wait till you see the moves. Look at that, so sick. Hey, can you not freeze me? And then arguably the best move is this one, Dragon Blast. Fires out a straight fire dragon. Even the dragon fruit doesn't do that. But some silly little pipe, it can fire out a fire dragon, which places down a little burn field as well. So visuals, damage, both very good. Also, the fact that you can use the Z move and hold them in place, I really like. So I'm guessing you could probably use that as a combo extender. I'm not much of a PvP guy, but I'm guessing you probably can. So this sword once again falls into the fun category, just because of simply how fun it is to place down a flame on the floor of where you're firing the X move. So I gotta do it. Pipe is an A tier sword. It has to be said. Now, before the most recent update, this sword used to be so bad, but now, I mean, still kind of bad, but there's something new about it that makes it so sick. And that's its new particles. Look at this. It's so cool. You just create an entire field. Like I'm on an icy island. I just made a field. And the way that they disappear, they like wither away. So sick. I've just made a patch of grass. Like Mr. Beast should hire me for Team Trees. Now there is like a hidden secret about this sword that not a lot of people know about. And if you do, you need to actually go outside and touch some actual grass. Not just the grass on the sword. And that's if you get close to someone and use the X move, you pull them with you and slam them down. Which is just so much fun. For that reason, I'm going to put the long sword in the A tier. Now you're probably wondering, huh? Why would you do that? Quite simply, there is no other fruit sword weapon gun that has these grassy effects. It's super unique and it's pretty funny. So I'm putting it in A tier. The next sword on the list is Smoker's Sword. Now this sword visually looks okay. It's basically a pipe, but worse. Its moves do actually look kind of cool. We've got Smoke Leopard, which just fires a smoky blast, and Smoke Apparition, which teleports you to them and places like a smoky area. So nothing too crazy, but also it's not the worst. In terms of how fast you left click, it's pretty quick. Not super slow, not super fast. However, it is is basically just like a worse smoke fruit, and the smoke fruit is already pretty bad. So simply for that reason, I can't put this any higher than C tier. In fact, it's probably bottom of C tier for me. However, this sword right here, yeah, this sword is so cool. The new gravity cane, I love it so much. You've got this move, which pulls people towards you. Already looks very cool. Oh, this move, ready? Whoop. Bro, he attacked me, so it didn't look right. Hold on. All right, okay. Lunar Blitz, attempt 2. You pull them up, slash them a load of times, and then slam them down. How sick is that? I feel like in terms of visuals and damage, the sword is really good. Not only that, but like how functional it is as well. You can pull people towards you, which if you did PvP is probably a useful skill to have. Also, not only that, you can lift them up, slam them down, and they're bewildered. They're bamboozled. Can you not? I was trying to say that also befuddled. So this sword, A tier, easily. Above pipe. Okay, I don't know how we're going from that to this. This is like if Darth Maul was in the medieval era. But not only that, it's not even a cool looking sword. Like assassinates. Wow, what a cool dash. Raging Wind is just 3 tornadoes. So visuals of this sword, very mid. I mean, it leaves the scratches on the floor, which is cool. But that's about the only thing that is cool. That move, I actually missed. Like, that's just how bad this sword is. I'm sure there's probably some, like, absolute demon out there who's, like, a dual-headed blade main. But this sword just isn't even fun. It's not even functional. So for me, it's gotta be, like... I'm just gonna put it D tier. It's like the Warden sword. Now, we've got the final rare sword, the Dragon Trident. And this sword, it looks sick, but it's built different. Z move of Dragon Trident. Sea Dragon Fury. A forward-facing water attack that looks sick and does huge damage. And not only that, but the best part about this sword is the X move. Water Dragon Shower. Watch this range. I'm hitting everything in that area. How OP is that? Also, this sword just like looks insanely cool. The fact that it's just like a water fountain, gotta give it brownie points for that simple reason. So this sword is honestly the easiest A tier ever. Easily. Now then, have I got an interesting sword for this next one? We've got Bicento. Now this sword, honestly, V1, it's kind of mid. But if you get V2, yeah, V2 is kind of built different. We've got Windbreaker, which does this. Fires off 3 like wind slashes. So sick. Quake Sphere as well. It's like a better Quake. Like, even Quake doesn't look this good somehow. It also feels really strong. I really like this sword. That move right there, the main reason why I like it. It's got a lot of range, a lot of damage. I mean, what's not to like? It's Whitebeard's sword. So if I'm purely ranking the V2 version, this X move, it just raises up by so many levels for me. So it's got to be A tier. Just below Gravity Cane, I'll put it. This right here is the Buddy Sword. This Devious Smile, it's not for show. Like, this sword is built different. Visuals of the sword itself, I mean, it's all right. And the actual visuals of the attacks, kind of mid. But how functional this sword is what makes it so good. The range of the attacks on this sword, I mean, you can basically hit people from across the map. It's insane. Lightning Wave, if I like stand over here and fire, like, I hit him, and I sent him flying. The damage of the sword is very good because it's got the passive damage. And if you combo the 2 moves, like, look at that. Nearly 9k damage just from 2 hits. Now, you do have to be, like, quite good at the game to actually hit people with the X move. Like, I missed by a tiny pixel, and it didn't hit. But that's part of the fun. So I'm gonna put the Buddy Sword also in A tier. I think I'll put it just below Bicento in terms of how much I like it. The next sword on the list is Kanvander. This sword is kind of cool. It has a lot of movement because of the left clicks. Like, you literally just only go forwards. The way that you hold it as well, like you're fencing, is kind of cool. And while the boss that uses this sword is like very strong, the sword itself feels a bit lackluster. It's like Piercing Dash. It does look okay with how it scatters petals around, but actually just trying to hit people with left clicks, it's very difficult. Like, if you just stood still trying to left click them, it is not easy, which makes this sword like a lot less fun to use than it seems. And also just not very functional. I'm sure you could probably do some kind of cool combo with the 2 moves back to back, and it does do a lot of damage. Like, that did 9,000 damage. But the range as well is just kind of bad. I only just reached that NPC from there. So Kanvander, I'm just gonna put it below Soul Cane. But next, we have got one of the stupidest swords to get in the entire game. The Dark Dagger. Now, this sword gets bonus points for just being so difficult to actually attain because it's less than a 1% chance to get in total. Visuals, I mean, it's a mini Dark Blade. What's not to like? It's so funny how small it is. In terms of visuals of the moves, and you gotta pay close attention to the sound effects for this one. We've got Proficient Impale, which does a really high-pitched stab. Also has quite a bit of range. And then arguably the best part about this sword is Shaming Slash, where you teleport behind them and then stab. So while this sword might not have the craziest VFX, the fact that you can just teleport behind them and attack like that from super far away, it's got to be A tier. It can't not be A tier. I just don't think it's better than Gravity Cane, though. So I'm going to put it like number 2 in A tier. Next, we have got the Fox Lamp. Visuals of this sword, one of the best. It's a lamp that's like pulling in souls or something. Now, for visuals of the attacks, we've got the Z move, which just... how cool is that? You just start gathering flames around you and then fire them off super far away. But not only that, if you hit them with the Z move, they get absolutely barraged by the follow-up attacks. Also, the X move is just like incredibly cool. It's just a huge fire blast. So cannot complain about the visuals of this sword. In fact, it's probably the first S tier in visuals. Now, in terms of how functional it is, it's got a ton of range with the Z move, which does wombo combo the enemy. And then also the X has two forms. It's got the hold form, which we've used before. And if you tap, you teleport to them and do a big blast. But I haven't explained my favorite thing about this sword. My favorite thing about this sword is holding the Z move and spinning around in circles and creating a bubble around myself. For that simple reason, it's S tier. S tier sword. What can I say? Next up, we have got Koopekul. And this is probably one of the most interesting swords on the list for the simple reason of how well it actually combos with the control fruit. Now, normally if you use injection shots, I can't hit that guy all the way over there. Not even close. However, if I activate my room, and as long as the enemy is inside the room and I use injection shot, it just goes infinite distance and it hits. And you also saw as well, because of the lightning enchantment, I hit this guy next to me. So the fact that while you're in the room, you get almost infinite range on the X makes this sword so sick. And look at me side on the Z as well. You do a delayed stab injection thing. However, nobody's using the control fruit. It's just so bad. So while this sword can do that stuff, I gotta deduct the points. So while it's certainly not S tier, I'm just gonna put it around A tier. I think the particles and stuff definitely carry. We have got the Midnight Blade next. I absolutely love this sword. And while you can't really see what it looks like because of my enchantment, the sword itself, very cool looking. But don't get me started on the attacks. We've got portal opening. Teleports you to them and does that. How cool is that? And then crescent dash as well. Dashes forwards. Hits them with a portal slash. I think this sword might even just be my favorite sword in terms of visuals. So for that reason, it's already in S tier. I've also heard good things about this sword for combos and PvP. And in terms of how functional it is, you literally teleport to your opponent when you use the Z move. So it's actually quite decent for movement. So while it might not have the damage of some of the mythical swords we're going to be looking at soon, I gotta put it in S tier. The visuals carry so hard. Next up, we have got just a literal pole. That's it. This is not just any pole. No, no, no. This pole allows you to become Zeus himself. Behold! Explosive cloud. Explosive rain. Feeling underwhelmed yet? Because I am. While the visuals of this sword are like, all right. When you hold the X move, you like spin it around like this. That's about all this sword's got going for it. And not only that, the Z move doesn't even go that far. Same with the X move. So I'm sorry, pole V1, but you're just beat here. Nothing you can do about it. Oh, but what about the pole with neon lights on the end? Can you not? Okay, so on this sword, I've got the enchantment that makes enemies angry at me all the time. But that's kind of a good thing. So in terms of how the actual sword looks, it's very cool. It's got all these small little details. The actual attacking moves are like an upgraded version of the pole V1. And while the sword doesn't actually have any movement, apart from like the left click, the way that Electric Prison holds the enemies in place if you hit them for a little bit is making it not completely terrible. And I'm sure you could probably combo someone with the X move of this if you get them close. But honestly, just about everything in this sword, it's at best top of B tier. Now this sword at my hip is one that I've been waiting to show off. Other than the fact that it dislocates your arm whenever you hold it. Rengoku has some of the coolest moves. Now it's got an X move that does like a little floor of fire, and it already goes pretty far. But just you wait. If you hold the X move just a tiny bit more until the screen gets like a red glow and it starts glowing like this, and then you hold it and then you attack. Look at that AoE. How busted is that? Not to mention as well, the Z move does like a non-stop combo of flame attacks. Look at that AoE. That's insane. I feel like this sword is super slept on. I absolutely love the Rengoku sword just because of the X move. The X move carries so much. So much so that I'm putting it very top of A tier. I think it only just doesn't have enough movement. Next up is the Saber. A sword you can actually get in the first C, but if you manage to get its V2 version, which is this is what it is. It doesn't change anything visually apart from the attacks. Now, Saber V2's X move, it sounds like you're firing out a laser beam, and it looks like it as well. And then you got Deadly Rush, which is the same. Visuals on the Saber, next level. I think this is just like better CDK visuals. Not only that, but the damage of Saber is so good. In fact, I think a lot of people use this in PvP just because of how good the damage is. Oh, I got a Conjure Coco. See, guys, not only that, it gives you 2 times extra luck while holding it. Totally real and true fact. Also, the fact that this is like Shanks' sword, S tier. Simple. Don't even have to think about it. It's just fun to use. Now we've got one of the 3 true triple katanas. We've got Sadi. And personally, I think this sword is slept on. Like, while it might look a little bit basic, the attacks themselves, they are not basic. We've got Swords Dance, which wombo combos the enemy into the sky, and then True Air Slash, which has so much range. Did you see how I hit the skeleton that was all the way over there? So I think just with simply how far the X move's range is, and the fact that you can probably combo off the Z move, Sadi, A tier. Now this is one of the most recent swords to be added to Blox fruits, the Shark Anchor. And when I say that it's OP, that is an understatement. The first move is called Typhoon Toss, where if you hold it down, you grab anybody nearby, and then you yeet the anchor to wherever you're aiming. So if I aim it over there, it goes all the way over there. Armor Breaker as well is a dash move. that then combos and slams them down into the ground. So the visuals of this sword, easily an S tier. The damage, also an S tier. The fact that it can stun, what does this sword not do? Easily just one of the most fun swords to use because even the worst players can be good if they hold the shark anchor. So I especially like it for that reason. I'm putting it in S tier. Next up is Shisui. And this sword is only for people who either hate themselves or are very good at the game, which honestly probably come hand in hand, realistically. The first move you got is True Quiet Rush. Pretty simple, doesn't go too far, but looks and sounds incredible. And then you got Focus Shot, which is like a snipe. And it goes very far. I believe this is one of the swords that most people use in skill builds because of that reason. But I just really like how it looks and sounds. Never mind any skill build nonsense. I think this sword sounds really cool. And the fact that you can like snipe people from halfway across the map using this, extra cool. So I'm putting Shisui in S tier. I think it's better than Sadi as well. So it's gonna go right there. Next up is my spicy spiky trident. The actual sword itself, I mean, it's a spiky trident, right? But where the sword truly shines, it's its combo potential. Let's say Cake Queen is running away from me. You know, you can see the absolute terror in her eyes right now. I press the X move. Yoink! She's just instantly pulled towards me. And then the Z move as well. You push them forwards. And you can use it as like a combo extender, I think, right? That's something everybody rants and raves about with this sword. The fact that it's so good for combos. And one thing about the X move as well is even if you miss it, you can use it for movement. So not only can you move with the Z move, but you can also move with the X move if you hit it, that is. Which just makes it one of the most fun swords to use. The only thing that I don't really like about the sword is the questionable visual effects. But other than that, it's easily an S tier sword. Now, don't get me started on this sword. We've got the Tushita. Now, not only do you hold this sword like an absolute badass, like literally, I feel like a samurai. But because it's one of the cursed katanas, its visuals look insane. You've got Heavenly Lunges, which just sends out a bunch of stabs, and then you've got Celestial Ravager, which it leaves a giant X marks the spot on the floor. Also, this sword has like decent movement because of the X move. Like I just get sent flying forwards. And then the Z move just, it does so much damage. 5.7k. So while I don't actually think Tushita is the best of the two CDKs, I gotta put it in A tier. In fact, it's gotta be high A tier, just above Shisui. Now we have got the final of the true triple katanas. We've got Wanda. And this sword, if I'm being completely honest, it's kind of mid. You've got continuous slashes, which just, well, slashes a few times. Doesn't even do that good of damage. And then Dragon Gust, which while it sounds cool and fires off a dragon, which looks kind of cool, it's just mid. In my opinion, Wando is just like the worst of the three triple katanas. And it's not even that fun to use because you just stand there slashing a few times. I am about to die. Oh no, that's just exactly how bad Wando is. Well, it's not that bad, but it's not great either. Honestly, I think I'm just gonna put Wando in B tier. I'm not really a fan. Next, we have got the better of the two cursed katanas in my opinion. We've got Yama. And the reason why I think this sword is better of the two is because of how much range it actually has. The Z move, Hellish Slash, looks sick. You become like a Beyblade for a second and then do a slash. Infernal Hurricane as well. It's just a super anime looking attack, let's be real. You're slashing through them and then attacking after the slash. Like this Dragon Crew Warrior, they're not ready. Boom. I believe as well I've heard good things about people using this sword in PvP. I've never used it myself, so I don't know. But the overall visuals of this sword and just how fun it feels to use, honestly, make this an S tier sword for me. But probably bottom of S tier. It is time for the mythical swords. And we're starting with the Cursed Dual Katanas. Let's be real, you already know which category this is going to go in. We've got a move that when used close to someone, gets them trapped in a tornado and then fires them off. And then you've got an X move that has insane range that when hitting someone with it, fires off a blast after. Like, how cool is that? It's so visually cool. So in terms of how useful this is for movement, damage, and visuals, CDK is easily an S tier. It's not even close. Now we have got the Dark Blade. In my opinion, the coolest looking sword visually. I'm not quite sure why it's got these like little wings that flap. It's got bandages around the sword. What's not to like? That's not even to say how cool it looks visually. Now I've currently got it V3, which means it's got like this white glow instead of green. Its first Z move, so sick. And if you hold the Z move as well, you then fly forwards instead. Then we've got the X move, which fires forwards a giant blast, which goes very far. You might have thought, hey, that looked kind of cool. Just you wait. If you hold down the X move, you get an aura around you that changes the slash to be faster and like thinner. Visuals, S tier, easily. Damage, also S tier. There is a reason why this sword costs Robux. In terms of how fun this sword is to use, there's nothing like just jumping up into the air, becoming the protagonist, and then using your final slash. In fact, that's probably the best way to describe it. Using this sword makes you feel like you're the protagonist, even if you've only got 2.5 million bounty. Dark Blade, S tier as well. Next up is the Hallow Scythe, and it's perfect that it's nighttime because this sword is so cool. Its first move, the Z move, it's like an orange tornado. can't complain about how it looks visually. Its X move, Soul Execution, you dash towards them and then do a slash. In terms of visuals for all the mythical swords, it's honestly probably the worst looking in terms of all of them, but that doesn't mean it's bad. Now, the reason why I'm putting this sword in super high S tier is because it has the potential to one-shot admins. That's because there's this one-shot admin combo where if you knock an admin down into lava, they just lose all of their health because they can't escape the death cyclone, which means this sword can make admins bleed. Like, it is a scythe for a reason, which is kind of cool lore-wise, so it's S tier. No debate. Now, ignoring this one on the list, we're gonna go into this one next. The true triple katana. This sword got the best visual overhaul out of any sword in the game. I mean, just behold, watch. Z move. How cool is that? And then don't even get me started on Dragon Hurricane. It's got similar vibes to the Dark Blade, but it creates a tornado instead. It also has some of the highest left-click damage out of any sword in the entire game. So visuals alone, this sword is easily top of S tier. In terms of how functional it is as well, you can definitely use this in actual combos. It just doesn't have too much movement. And also, it's just fun having a sword in your mouth. Like, what's not to like? So the true triple katana is also an S tier sword. Surprise, surprise, all the mythicals are S tier. Next up, we have got the admin-only weapon. Actually, wait, hold on. I need to do something real quick. Let's do this. Boom, there we go. And there we go. I'm not going to elaborate on why that deserves that ranking right there. I mean, come on, let's be honest. None of us are going to see that sword or even use it. It sucks. And that's exactly why it's F tier. Unless I get one, in which case it's SSS. Well, this is my tier list of swords. This is basically like a non-PvP luck. So if you guys have any like different opinions because you're little PvP sweats, let me know in the comments. However, I won't hear any slander for my S tier picks. I've got every fighting style from Blox Fruits in a tier list, and I'm going to be ranking them to decide what the true best fighting style in the game is. These are going to be ranked from 6 things: how hard it is to obtain, the visuals, the damage in PvP, and then grinding, enjoyment, and finally how functional it is. And we're starting with Dark Step. That's right, not combat. And I'll get into just why later on. But in terms of obtaining Dark Step, as long as you've got the cash requirement, you could buy it instantly in the first sea, making it already like very good to obtain. Now, if we're speaking visuals, the way that you kick is honestly kind of cool. You've then got the first move, Flying Kick, which is, well, a flying kick. You've got Breakdance, where you become a Beyblade, and then you've got Barrage, which is like a kick barrage. And if you click Overheat, you do like a little spin, and then your moves do more damage and become like flamey versions, which are very good actually. In terms of damage, and this is going to be the same for like basically every single fighting style, the damage is good, especially on the left clicks. But in terms of ability damage, the only way you're really doing a ton is if you hit them with a Barrage or the Breakdance, which is rarely going to happen unless you're grinding. So for grinding, this fighting style is pretty good, but for PvP, you've got to be someone with true skill, which I am not. Now, in terms of how fun this fighting style is, it's definitely on the lower side. Its moves just don't really last too long. The problem with this fighting style is all the moves pretty much lock you into an action, so you can't like actually do anything. Like, I'm spamming WASD, but I can't move. And then finally, if we're talking about how functional this fruit is, it's definitely not that functional. You've got like no movement abilities. That traps you in place, or rather, you've got no good movement abilities, I should say. And then these moves here, you can still take damage if you're a bit too close. So for that reason, Dark Step, it's just got to be C tier. There's nothing special. It's not that great. Next up, we have got the electric fighting style. And if you ignore my spicy feats, you get it from this guy, the Mad Scientist. But this one costs 500k. So in the first sea, you better have double money, or this is going to be hard to afford. But because you can simply obtain it in the first sea, it is definitely very easy to get. In terms of visuals of this fighting style, I mean, the electric hands is kind of cool. The actual moves, you've got Stomp, which you do a Goomba Stomp with a bit of lightning. Electric Tackle is just like a dash forwards. And then Electric Floor, which, as it suggests, you turn the floor into electricity. But if I'm being honest, it just doesn't look as cool as actual lightning like fruits and swords, which is definitely where it falls short. Now, once again, damage for PvP and grinding is about the same. However, I feel like electric is very hard to use in PvP. Once again, might just be because I'm a noob, but realistically, how are you going to catch a sky camper or somebody with electric floor? It's got such small range. Stomp locks you in vertically, and electric tackle goes like -2 meters. Like, that's the limit of the range. Now, what this fighting style does have compared to others is the fun. If you click Stomp and then you're above someone and slam down, it's pretty satisfying, which makes it kind of fun to use. But notice how I said kinda? Yep, honestly, it's kind of mid. I'm not gonna lie. Definitely not super functional either. Like, if I'm trying to move up this rock, electric tackle barely cuts it. Like, at that point, you're just gonna use double jump. And the same thing goes for trying to chase people down in PvP. Like, you're never gonna catch up to them with this fighting style. So for that reason, it has got to go same as Dark Step. Next on the tier list is Water Kung Fu. And this is one of my favorite fighting styles from the first sea. Now, to obtain this fighting style, you gotta come to underwater, which is pretty simple. And then you gotta go down like a sneaky little route, find this discolored part of the reef, walk through, and then you can get the fighting style. Which, other than the fact that it's maybe a tiny bit obscure to get, realistically, compared to some of the later ones, this is insanely easy to to obtain. Now, for the visuals of Water Kung Fu, you've got like little bubbles on every single one of your punches, which is very cool. The first move is Steam Charged Fist, which fires off a bit of steam. Honestly, the most mid move of this fighting style. You've then got Deadly Shower, which is one of the coolest ones of this fighting style, leaving little puddles around on the floor. And then finally, Heavy Water Punch, which is like a dash forwards and a punch, and I just missed. Now, this fighting style is actually really cool, and it's for one simple reason. The X move of this fighting style has almost infinite range. You see that NPC over there? Because honestly, I kind of don't. It's a bit misty. But if I fire this, it hits all the way from there. I could be like halfway across the map and it would still hit, which makes this fighting style just so much fun to use. Now, it's not super functional because like you saw, if you're too close, it is easy to miss the C move, and the Z move barely has any range. But if we're talking actual damage, this fighting style is kind of insane. So in terms of how functional it is, although you don't have much movement, the fact that you've got so much range more than makes up for it. Like that enemy all the way over there. Easy like I did 3k damage from all the way over here, which I know you're not going to hit in PvP, but still having the option of doing that is huge. So for that reason, Water Kung Fu, B tier. Definitely better than the other two from the first C. This is the Dragon Breath fighting style. A super easy fighting style to get in the second C because it only costs 1500 fragments from this guy. Now with Dragon Breath, the visuals are honestly very mid. Probably one of the most mid in the game, just behind Dark Step. The actual damage of this fighting style is quite good, but not only is the Z move hard to hit, but the X move has very limited range, and the C move has so much charge up time, you're almost never going to hit it in PvP. At least that's what I've heard. Now, if we're talking about how fun this fighting style is to use, it's probably on the lower end because of just how annoying all the moves are to actually use. As you saw, I completely missed that attack right there because it was just slightly out of my range. And the charge up time of the C move makes it just quite annoying to use because you take useless damage for no reason. So in terms of how functional it is, I suppose it's got more movement than any of the other fighting styles we've looked at so far. But just because of how limiting it feels, I've got to put it C tier. Now we've got Superhuman, a staple of skilled builds on Blox Fruits. Now this fighting style is definitely the most difficult one to obtain we've seen so far. And for good reason. This fighting style is a mini God Human. I mean, that's exactly what it is. It's Superhuman, not God Human. Its moves is a Z move, which does an insane wombo combo with a lot of damage. You've got Thunderclap, which is a giant area slam. And then the final move is Conqueror's Gun, which is a dash forward punch. Now, in terms of visuals, this fighting style looks terrible. But if we're purely talking damage, then this fighting style has got every single one we've seen so far beat, mainly due to its combo potential. So if we're talking how functional this is, Superhuman is probably one of the most functional fighting styles you could possibly get due to just all of the combo potential you have. Now, while you might be able to have a bunch of combos, getting this fighting style is not easy because you need every other fighting style we've seen so far with 300 mastery to even unlock it, which is just long to get. It's definitely not as bad as a couple of others we're gonna see, but still just so tedious to get. Also, in terms of this fighting style's movement, you've got two options to travel and gap close. So for that reason, Superhuman, A tier. I'm not putting it S tier because some of the other fighting styles are just so much better. Next on the list is Death Step. And this fighting style is just literally a better Dark Step. And when I say better, I mean much better. It just improves Dark Step in every single way. We've got a much better traveling move that you can actually use to gain some distance. You've got a ranged wind kick attack. You've got a better Beyblade move. Not sure how that was possible. And not just all of that, but when my cooldown's done, you can activate the flamey feats without having to get trapped in a cutscene, which is just so much better. And also what this does differently, it starts to leave flamey patches whenever you use any of your attacks, which is just so good for doing extra damage. Now, although this fighting style is very expensive and you need a lot of stuff to get it, the only real requirement you need is Dark Step to Mastery 400. Now, I genuinely think this fighting style is one of the more fun fighting styles in the game, mainly because of how much more movement it has compared to the first one. And the damage, definitely much better. But now here's where we run into a problem. Where does it go on the tier list? Honestly, I think if I had to rank this, I'd put it just below Superhuman, because while it's good, I don't think it's that good for extending combos, unless you use the C move, but that's about it. This is the Electric Claw fighting style, and you get it from this guy here, Previous Hero. Now, not only does it cost 3,005,000 fragments, but you do also need Electric to 400 mastery. There are also some quests you gotta go through to unlock this fighting style, but nothing too crazy. Now, in terms of visuals, Electric Claw is insanely cool. It's in every way just a better Electric. Now, for the actual attacks, you've got a Claw Barrage Strike thingy. You've got Lightning Thrust. And then the final move, Thunderclap and Flash. And every single one of these is a movement ability, which we haven't seen so far yet, which already makes this fighting style just so much more functional. Other than that, the fact that Lightning Thrust has such long range just goes to show that you only get this in the third C. Now, Thunderclap and Flash as well has like lock-on properties, so like you can't miss unless you're terrible. But this fighting style has a secret not many people know about. If you have the Buddha fruits and you do a little cheeky transformation, you can get giant electric claws, which just look hilarious. So I gotta say, electric claw, I think is gonna be our first S rank. Next up is Sharkman Karate. And as you can see by the fact that I've got this Mastery 600, this is one of my favorite fighting styles in the game. Now, we haven't been ranking any of the fighting styles on this, but the sound effects of Sharkman Karate are just very clean. The visuals of the left clicks as well also look very good. The visuals of the Z move do look pretty cool. The X move also kind of clean. And the C move is basically just the X move again. And obtaining this fighting style is pretty simple. You can do it quite easily in the second C, but you do need Water Kung Fu to 400 mastery, making it a little bit more difficult to obtain. Now, if we're talking damage and combo potential, this fighting style has a lot of them. With its C move, pulling enemies towards you, you can combo this with so many different things. And also the Z move having such good movement. I don't think we've seen a fighting style with movement as good as that just yet. Even Electric Claw doesn't give you that much momentum. So because of its combo potential and its functionalness, I just sent that guy flying. This is the easiest S tier I've ever seen, and it's definitely better than Electric Claw as well. This right here is the Dragon Talon fighting style. A fighting style that is honestly very tedious to get. Like, it took me almost an entire day to get this one. But although it took me so long, the visuals of having flames on your hands is very cool. Now, the actual moves, you've got a Z move, which grabs them, and then the blue fire. It's so cool. You've also got an X move that fires off a very long range attack that if you aim, you can actually like control and move around, which is something super unique to this fighting style. And then you've also got the C move, which is literally just a nuke. So with the damage of all of those, the range, the extra burn damage, and the blue fire, this is just a really fun fighting style to use. Can't even say it's not. It's also super functional because the load up time for that attack right there just isn't as long as Dragon Breath, which is one of the problems with Dragon Breath. This fighting style just fixes like every problem Dragon Breath had. Now, because of this guy right here, I've got to be careful where I place this, or else my account might be gone forever. So, yeah, this fighting style is so very easily, it's S tier. I can't even lie. It's just too good. No matter how much I don't want to admit it, Dragon Talon's just amazing. Now, next up is God Human, who you can get from this guy here, the Ancient Monk. Now, although that seemed easy to get, look at all these requirements. This is one of the hardest fighting styles to get in the entire game. There are just 2 fighting styles that are harder to get than this one. Now, other than the super cool rainbowy effect you get whenever you punch, this fighting style has insane damage, insane range, and an ability that just completely tracks. Also, the X move has like 2 forms. There's the tap move you just saw, and then like this hold move, which has AoE. There is a reason why this fighting style is called God Human. It just does insane amounts of damage. It has so much movement, and the C move is probably one of the most broken things in the entire game. Now, as I've not gotten much into PvP myself, you guys will have to let me know, but I assume the God Human is just one of the best things to have for PvP. Like, you probably can't go wrong with just having so many combo extenders. Now, this fighting style is so much fun to use. With how much movement it has, how much damage it has, the only thing I feel that's missing is maybe the visuals. Like, I suppose it does what it's meant to do, but I just feel like the recent stuff Blox has been cooking is just so much cooler than this. But even despite that, it's just in a league of its own. It's just the best. Top of S tier, easily. Next up, we have got Sanguine Arts, the latest fighting style to come out in Blox. And also, in my opinion, the hardest one to get, because just to unlock this fighting style, not only do you need all these materials, where these 2 are just annoying to grind, but you need a Leviathan heart, which means you need a Beast Hunter boat. You need to go find the Leviathan, you need to beat it, you need to bring the heart back. That's just so long. But hey, on the bright side, you get like a cool left click that has more range than other left clicks. You get a move that heals HP, a Nezuko ripoff move, and then a C move that just grabs people and then has delayed attacks. So in my opinion, it's definitely competing with God Human for being like super functional. The only thing that it's really lacking is movement, but in the damage department, it's just so much better. Now, what does set this fighting style apart for me is the fact that it's basically got the Buddha fruit built in. Like, you can left click NPCs without risk of being hit yourself because of the extra range, which is just really nice. Now, also for noobs like me in PvP, having the ability to just heal HP back is so good. Now, I can't say how good it actually is for combos, but just grinding in general, it's insane. And also, just the fact that it uses blood for its attacks, it's S tier. In fact, it's probably number 2. But now we're on to combat, and there is a reason why I've been saving this one till last. And that is because this fighting style, without even a logo, is impossible to get. Like, there's actually no way to get this, making it quite possibly the rarest fighting style in the entire game. As if you've used any of the other fighting styles before, it's impossible to have combat, which I gotta say, does kind of put it in a league of its own. Now, if we're talking damage numbers, look at that. I'm hitting for 50,000 every hit. That's right, combat is just that built different, and I only have 85 mastery. We've also got quick tackle, which, you know, it's a quick tackle. God Human could never. We've got ground smash as well. which has more range than seemingly the Dragon rework's gonna have. This fighting style is just infinitely better than everything else. Now, on a real note, I would normally put combat here and call it a day. However, not only is this the only way that you can deal damage at the start of the game, but the fact that it's basically extinct from as soon as you change it means that combat has actually got to go in this tier right here. Combat walked so we could run. If you're in the 3rd sea, your max level, you've got like all this cool stuff. You've got to thank combat because it got you to this point. Unless you bought a permanent fruit, in which case you're cringe. So this is the tier list. If you guys are any Dark Step mains and think Dark Step is actually SSS+, then be sure to let me know in the comments. But just let me know what your tier list looks like.